I thought I had everything: power, money, success. But one rainy night changed everything.
Excuse
I
me,
walked
can I
into a
ask you
small
something?
restaurant
Of course, how can I help?
and saw my
It's
pregnant
personal. Is there
ex-wife
somewhere
working as a
quieter?
waitress. Years ago, I had lost her. I thought she left me. But what she whispered that night, what I discovered next, shattered everything I believed about love, trust, and
Is it good?
success. It was a
perfect.
moment I will never
Good.
forget,
My turn.
and it changed my life forever. The night I saw her again, the smell of coffee and burnt butter filled the small restaurant. Rain tapped softly against the window beside my table. I was a millionaire by then. Custom suit. Expensive watch. A life people envied. Yet my chest always felt strangely empty. Then I saw her. Emily. My ex-wife. She walked slowly between tables carrying a tray of dishes. Her uniform looked worn. Her hair was tied back carelessly. And her belly was unmistakably pregnant. My heart slammed against my ribs. 5 years earlier I had lost everything. My business collapsed. Friends disappeared. Debt collectors waited outside my apartment. I remember the night I shouted at her. The night I said cruel things because I felt like a failure. She left quietly. No screaming. No blame. Only tears in her eyes. That night I believed she abandoned me. But standing there in that restaurant, watching her serve strangers with tired hands, I felt something break inside me. She noticed me. The tray in her hands trembled. For a moment neither of us spoke. I remembered the night she stayed awake beside me while I built my first company. The cheap noodles we shared. The way she whispered, "You are stronger than your worst day." After she left, I worked like a man possessed. Years of sleepless nights. Risk after risk. Failure after failure. Until one idea finally turned into a billion-dollar empire. And now the woman who once believed in me stood in front of me. Pregnant. And working as a waitress. Slowly, she walked toward my table. Her eyes were filled with emotions I could not understand. Then she said something that made my entire world stop. She placed the tray down slowly. Her hands were shaking. "I never left because I stopped loving you," she said softly. Her voice carried the same warmth I remembered from the nights we had nothing but hope. "I left because you needed space to become the man you were meant to be." The restaurant noise faded around me. Only her words remained. "I was afraid," she continued, "that my presence would remind you of failure instead of strength." My chest tightened. All those years, I believed she had abandoned me. But she had been protecting my pride. Protecting my future. I stood from my chair. The expensive suit suddenly felt heavy on my shoulders. "You watched me suffer," I said quietly. "You watched me fall apart." A tear rolled down her cheek. "Yes," she whispered. "But I also knew you would rise." The truth hit me harder than any failure I had ever faced. She had believed in the man I could become. Even when I hated the man I was. My voice trembled. "And the baby?" Her hand rested gently on her stomach. Her eyes met mine with quiet strength. "You deserve to know the truth." My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. For years I built companies, closed billion-dollar deals, and stood in rooms full of powerful people. Yet nothing had ever terrified me like this moment. The rain outside grew heavier. The restaurant lights flickered softly above us. Then she leaned closer to the table and whispered something that made my entire future suddenly feel uncertain. "It is your child." Her words fell gently, but they struck my heart like thunder. For a moment I could not breathe. The restaurant noise returned slowly. Plates clinking, chairs scraping, rain whispering on the windows. But inside me, everything stood still. "My child?" I repeated softly. She nodded. I found out after I left, she said. Her eyes lowered to the floor. I thought you needed peace to rebuild your life. I did not want you to feel trapped by responsibility when you were already drowning. A storm of emotions rushed through me. Shock. Pain. Guilt. All those lonely nights I spent building my empire. My family had existed somewhere without me. And you raised this child alone? I asked. Her tired smile answered before her words did. I tried. Tried. The word cut deeper than any accusation. I looked at her worn shoes, her exhausted eyes, her shaking hands. The woman who once shared dreams with me had been fighting life alone, while I was signing contracts in glass towers. I searched for you, she continued quietly. But by the time your success appeared everywhere, you seemed too far above my world. My throat tightened. Money had built walls around me that I never noticed. I slowly reached for her trembling hand. For years I believed success meant power. But in that moment, holding the fragile hand of the woman who once believed in me, I realized something far more valuable had been missing. My voice softened. You should never have carried this alone. Tears filled her eyes. Just then, the restaurant manager shouted angrily from across the room. She flinched. And what he said next made me realize how much she had truly suffered without me. Emily, stop talking and get back to work. The manager shouted harshly. His voice cut through the room like a knife. Customers turned to stare. Emily lowered her head. I am sorry, she whispered to me. She reached for the tray again, her hands trembling more than before. Something inside me snapped. This woman once stood beside me when I had nothing. She shared cold nights, empty wallets, broken dreams. And now she was being humiliated while carrying my child. I stood up slowly. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. The manager walked toward us with irritation on his face. If you want to chat, do it after your shift, he said coldly. Then his eyes moved over my suit. His tone changed slightly, but the arrogance remained. We run a business here. For years I had controlled billion-dollar companies. Yet I had never felt anger like this. I looked at Emily. She looked smaller than I remembered. Tired. Brave. Still protecting my dignity even after everything. Is this how you treat your workers? I asked calmly. The manager shrugged. She is slow. She makes mistakes. Customers complain. Emily quickly shook her head. Please, do not cause trouble, she whispered. Her words carried fear. Fear I had never noticed before. I pulled out my phone. Within seconds I called my assistant. The manager crossed his arms impatiently. Sir, if you are finished eating, please pay and leave. I ended the call and placed the phone back in my pocket. Then I looked around the restaurant. At the tables. The walls. The crowded kitchen behind the glass window. Emily watched me with confusion. Why did you call someone? She asked softly. I looked into her tired eyes and said something that made the manager suddenly nervous. I just asked my assistant to bring the ownership papers. The manager frowned. What papers? He asked sharply. I looked around the small restaurant again. The chipped tables. The flickering lights. The tired workers moving silently between customers. Then I looked back at him. The papers for this building, I said calmly. His confident expression cracked. Emily stared at me in shock. What do you mean? She whispered. Before I could answer, the glass door opened. Cold rain air rushed inside. My assistant hurried toward me, holding a black folder against his chest. He nodded respectfully. Everything is ready, sir. The entire room had grown quiet. The manager looked from my suit to the folder in my assistant's hands. "What is happening here?" he demanded. I slowly opened the folder on the table. Documents spread neatly across the surface. Property contracts. Ownership agreements. Signatures already prepared. "I bought this restaurant this morning," I said. Gasps filled the room. Emily covered her mouth with trembling fingers. "You bought it," she said softly. I turned the papers toward the manager. His face had turned pale. "You said you run a business," I continued calmly. "Well, now I do." The workers nearby froze in place. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Not tears of sadness, but something deeper. Something that carried years of silent pain. The manager suddenly tried to change his tone. "Sir, we can discuss this professionally." I looked at Emily again. At the woman who once believed in me, when I was nothing but a broken dreamer. Then I spoke words that made the entire restaurant fall silent. "Emily, this place is yours now." Her eyes widened in disbelief. But before she could respond, she suddenly held her stomach tightly. Her face turned pale. And in that terrifying moment, I realized something was very wrong. "Emily?" I said, rushing toward her. Her tray crashed to the floor. Plates shattered across the tiles. She gripped the edge of the table, breathing sharply. Pain filled her face. I am fine," she tried to say. But her voice trembled. Her knees began to weaken. I caught her before she could fall. The entire restaurant froze. Workers stood motionless. Customers whispered nervously. "Call an ambulance," I shouted. My assistant immediately pulled out his phone. Emily clutched my arm tightly. Her fingers were cold. "You should not see me like this," she whispered weakly. My chest tightened. "Stop," I said gently. "You carried my child alone. You carried your pain alone. You will never face anything alone again." Tears rolled down her cheeks. Another wave of pain struck her. She gasped and leaned heavily against me. "I tried to stay strong," she whispered. "You are strong," I replied softly. The sound of distant sirens slowly grew louder outside. Rain continued to fall against the windows. Inside the restaurant, the manager stood silently, his arrogance completely gone. But in that moment, none of that mattered. All that mattered was the woman in my arms. Emily looked up at me with tired eyes. "There is something else you should know," she said quietly. My heart pounded. "What is it?" I asked. She hesitated. Fear flickered across her face. Then she whispered something that made my mind spin with confusion. Something I never expected to hear. Something that meant the truth about the past 5 years was far more complicated than I ever imagined. "The child is not the only reason I left." Her words made my heart skip. The ambulance sirens grew louder outside. But in that moment I heard only her voice. "What do you mean?" I asked softly. She struggled to breathe through the pain. "There was someone else," she whispered. A cold wave rushed through me. For years I believed my failure destroyed our marriage. Now another truth was standing between us. "Someone else?" I repeated. She nodded weakly. "After your company collapsed, the pressure around you became dangerous." Her fingers tightened around my sleeve. Men started coming to the apartment. Angry investors. Debt collectors. People who wanted money you did not have. I remembered those nights. The pounding on the door. The threats. The fear. "I thought they would hurt you," she said quietly. "So you left?" I asked. Tears filled her eyes. "No, not only that." The ambulance lights flashed through the restaurant windows. Paramedics rushed inside with a stretcher. But Emily held my arm tightly. "Please, listen first," she pleaded. Her voice trembled. "One of those men came back after you left that night." My heart began to race. "He said terrible things," she continued. "He said if the debt was not paid, they would take everything from you." I clenched my fists. "But what does that have to do with you leaving?" I asked. Emily looked into my eyes with a mixture of fear and sadness. "Because that man did not want money anymore." The paramedics stopped beside us. "Sir, we must take her now," one of them said urgently. But Emily whispered one final sentence before they lifted her onto the stretcher. A sentence that made my blood run cold. "That man wanted me." I froze. Her words hung in the air, heavier than the storm outside. The paramedics gently lifted her onto the stretcher. But I could not move. "Wanted you?" I whispered, voice barely audible. Emily's hand squeezed mine tightly. "Yes," she said, eyes full of terror and regret. "I left to protect you, and the baby. I thought I could face it alone." The sirens grew louder as they wheeled her toward the ambulance door. I wanted to stop time. I wanted to hold her and tell her I could have fought, that she did not have to suffer alone. But I was paralyzed by guilt, by the weight of years lost, by the empire I had built while she had faced danger silently. I remembered every sleepless night. Every broken deal. Every moment I had blamed myself for failure. Never realizing the real danger had always been outside my office, not inside my mind. The rain poured harder. It drenched my expensive suit, but I did not care. The manager and the other workers stared at me in silence. They could not understand. No one could understand the storm inside me. I followed the ambulance in my car. My hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Memories of our early days flashed before my eyes. The cheap apartment. Shared dreams. Her smile lighting the darkest nights. And now, the woman who had loved me through nothing, who had sacrificed everything for me, was lying in a stretcher, facing danger I had never imagined. While I had spent years building a world she had quietly shielded me from. The hospital lights glowed ahead. I parked and ran toward the doors. My heart hammering with fear and something deeper, regret, anger, and hope all tangled together. When I reached her side, her eyes met mine, filled with trust and pain. And she whispered something that made my blood run colder than the storm outside. "They are still after me." I froze beside her hospital bed. My heart hammering like it might burst. The machines beeped softly. The smell of antiseptic sharp in my nose. Her hand was fragile in mine. Skin trembling against my fingers. "They are still after me," she whispered again. Her voice was low, almost a breath. I gritted my teeth. For years I had built empires. Faced ruthless competitors. Signed billion-dollar deals. But nothing had prepared me for this. Her life in danger. And my child's future uncertain. "Tell me everything," I said firmly. "No more hiding." Emily's eyes welled with tears. She drew a shaky breath. "After you left, they found me. They knew I had information about your company, your debts. They threatened to hurt me if I interfered." I felt a surge of guilt so sharp it burned my chest. All those years I had counted losses. Missed opportunities. And now the real stakes, life and love, had been silently carried by her. "I should have been here," I whispered, my voice thick with regret. "I should have protected you." She shook her head weakly. "You became the man you were meant to be. I just had to survive until you returned." I held her hand tighter. "Not anymore. I will not let anyone harm you, or our child." Her eyes shone with a mix of relief and fear. A faint smile touched her lips. The hospital doors opened suddenly. A man in a dark coat appeared, scanning the room. He froze when he saw me. Emily gasped. "My worst nightmare," she whispered. I stood between her and the stranger, my mind racing, every instinct screaming to protect her, every ounce of my wealth and influence ready to be unleashed. For the first time, I realized that true success was not money or power. It was the people you protect, the love you fight for, and the courage to face the darkness together. The man took a step closer. And in that heartbeat, everything I had built and everything I had lost collided in a single, terrifying moment. I stepped forward, my voice calm but unyielding. "You will not touch her," I said. The man's eyes widened, realizing the determination behind my words. In that moment, years of fear and struggle crystallized into clarity. Emily held my hand tightly, her strength renewed by my presence. The hospital staff watched silently as I calmly contacted the authorities, ensuring he could harm neither her nor our child. Days passed. Emily recovered, and the child grew stronger with each heartbeat she shared. I spent hours by her side, sharing stories, laughter, and tears. The empire I had built suddenly felt complete, not because of wealth, but because I had found the courage to protect and cherish the ones I loved. We renovated the small restaurant together, turning it into a place of hope and opportunity for others struggling like we once did. Emily smiled every day, her resilience inspiring everyone who entered our doors. I learned that success was meaningless without love, compassion, and integrity. Looking back, I realized how fragile life is, how easily pride and ambition can blind us. But love, true love, gives strength to overcome any obstacle. Emily's sacrifice, her unwavering faith in me, taught me that trust, patience, and courage are the true foundations of life. On the day our child was born, I held both Emily and the baby close, feeling a depth of gratitude I had never known. The lessons of the past pain, betrayal, fear, and failure had forged us into something stronger. I whispered softly, "Every hardship, every tear, every fear, led us here. And now we rise together." From that day forward, I vowed to live not just for ambition, but for love, integrity, and the courage to protect those who matter most. Moral: true success is measured not by wealth or power, but by love, courage, and the strength to uplift and protect those who stand beside you. If this story touched your heart, please like and share it with someone who needs hope today. Subscribe to Heart Touch Story, and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss another emotional, inspiring journey. Comment below and let us know how this story made you feel. Or share your own story of love, sacrifice, and courage.